Everybody, and welcome back to another dev video. So I'm here to show off something I've been working on for quite a while. Now the system was already implemented here about a couple months ago. It was there, it kind of worked, but you really couldn't do anything with it. It was incomplete, unfinished, etc, etc. So this system is the Json override system. It's actually one of the bigger components for the Json system. So I'm not just making the Json system to make my job easier. I also build it out as probably one of the best ways for content creators and mod pack makers to effectively change the content they have. So say you have a machine, and we're going to be using the sentry gun as examples. This is the only machine type that supports this right now. So say you have the sentry gun and you kind of like how it works, but you want to change things. You want to change, say, for example, the ammo, the damage type, what targets you can shoot, how fast it reacts, everything else like that. So you want to change all that. Now right now, that's all implemented as JSON data. You don't have access to that. The only way to change it would be to go into the jar file, pull the JSON out, edit it, put it back in the jar file, and you'd modify your values. Now before we had JSON, there was no way to modify this short of actually making your own mod that would say ASM inject or reflection modify the sentry gun to do what you wanted to do. Now with the override system and the JSON system I have, everything is built out as data. So you can take this data, you can manipulate the data, you can transform the data, you can do whatever you want with that data to make this change. And in this case, with the override system, you can modify this externally without having to change anything that's part of the mod itself. So effectively the same way you do configs. Now the reason why configs aren't being implemented for this is just plain and simple. You get a config file with like 50,000 machines in it, you're not going to find anything. I've seen some mods try to do it, and the amount of changes we have available for a lot of the content in here, you're going to have like a 100-line file with changes available per machine. So we have a sentry gun right here, which has a ton of different options, but there's tons of sentry guns. So let me go ahead and pull out all the different sentry guns. Now all these now support this, by the way, because all the sentry guns use the same exact code. So we have like a laser sentry gun, which, not let me place. I think I grabbed the wrong value. Yeah. I grabbed the gun versions. Now there's a gun version, there's a sentry version. I'm still working on fixing NEI, so this doesn't show up. Let's go to the actual creative tab, make this easier. So there's a whole bunch of different sentry guns available. So you have all these different guns that all have the same code, that all have the same data. So I can go to each one of these and I can tell it to dump its information and get access to all the JSON and do stuff with it. And I'm going to show you how to pretty much do that. So first thing off, all this stuff goes into the JSON folder. So your config folder in your mod pack or your mod installation or whatever, the BBM folder, and then the JSON folder. So anything you put in here will change things. Now this is the file it's going to generate. This is all the information that you can access and you can modify and change for the sentry gun and for the Wojuju survival mod. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this so we can regenerate this. I also have another version. You don't have to have everything in it. If you actually read the notes when it generates, it'll pretty much tell you. We put underscores in front of everything to prevent it from loading. You have to remove these underscores to get loaded. So if you leave the underscore there, it's going to ignore it. There's actually code that flat out strips this out of the JSON when it goes to load. And it's there to prevent it from loading, so you don't have to modify data. So if you don't want to modify the rotation speed, you don't have to modify it, so you can delete all that out of here. So you can literally just take all this and get rid of it and leave only what you want in there. It also allows you to selectively pick things, allows you to pretty much do whatever you want without having to worry about newer values not taking effect. That's one of the big things. A lot of people who use config files for this option, they either take two approaches. They put a default value in there that never changes, or they put a placeholder value that doesn't take effect, and then you have to go look up the actual value and do stuff. With this, you can see the actual value, and then it's set up so that way nothing changes. And the reason for that, say if I come in the future and I go, okay, well, I want to bump the rotation speed up to 25. If you had the 15 in there, you would still have the 15 after updating. So if I went, hey, I fixed this cool bug where the sentry turrets weren't reacting quick enough, you would not get that change if we had a config file. With the JSON, and as long as you leave the underscore in front of that, you'll get the new value. It will not update the entry here, but I will be working on stuff that allow you to update retroactively, all kinds of stuff. But for the moment, we have two simple commands we're going to use. So the first command is you can generate it. So you can call VE, you can type in volts engine or VE, doesn't matter. JSON to say you want to work with the JSON system, overrides work with the JSON's override system. Gen or generate, it's registered as two separate commands, but that they do the same thing. And then the category, so we're in the case we want to modify sentries, but later they'll be available for swords, well, it's actually called melee weapons. So melee weapons, melee tools, You'll have ammo, all that stuff. So all that stuff will eventually be accessible. Then you just give the ID. So the ID is usually the mod and then the name of the item. In this case, it's Wojujo Sentry Gun. So that will then generate a file to go, hey, found it, writing it to file, completed generating, and it will tell you. Eventually, I want to make this link clickable. I have not got the code set up for that, but it will be there. And there we go. It generated the file. It will tell me that to modify because it was already in there. And it generates all this in here. The important things to look at with this, if you ever want to write your own version of this and don't want to generate it automatically, you need to specify the processor. So there actually is processors built into the mod that actually deal with this. That's when you're specifying the type, you're actually specifying the piece of code that deals with the sentry guns. So that would be the sentry processor. You then specify the content ID. I may actually change this in the future to be type, then mod, then ID, but right now it works. There's no reason. Then you then have the action here. You want to pick one. Right now it's actually edit is the one you want to look for. I need to modify that. I changed the word replace to edit because it sounds a little better. When somebody thinks of the word replace, they're like, I'm replacing the sentry gun. That feature will actually be in there later. So you'll be able to completely, utterly replace it. You'll also be able to remove content and other things as well. There's a whole system for that. So you want to set your action type to edit. That will edit the file. Then you want to enable it. So you can turn this on and off. This uses the JSON conditional system. I will do a video on that later. But what effectively you can do with the JSON conditional system is you could specify a huge Boolean logic system. Like say, for example, date equals, say, like dec 17, 2017. So if the date equals that, then you enable it. So this is really cool because not only does this let you do more advanced logic, I can then turn around and build out logic to say, okay, on this day, I want to modify the sentry gun health to be double. On this day, I want them to rotate twice as fast. On this day, I want to turn them off. So you can actually specify behavioral logic. But for most of you, just turn it to true because it works. Then you got all this stuff. You can, of course, remove all the notes. There's no reason for them being there. Because the only thing the system is looking for, it's only looking for this stuff. Then it takes the content side of the data and it injects it back into the sentry gun. So there's actually a sentry gun JSON, and if I pop it open here and show you what the code actually looks like. And let us find where in the world I'm at. I get lost in my own code more than other people do. So content, weapons, nope, not weapons, we want guns. Sentry. So this is the actual sentry data, and of course there's like renders, recipes, everything else. Each of these will be independent, but this is what it actually looks like. This is what it generates. So it pretty much gives you roughly everything. There's a few things it doesn't give you access to. It doesn't give you access to creative tab. Doesn't let you change the name or the IDs. Doesn't let you change the gun IDs. These are things that if you try to change these, it would mess really bad with everything. But it gives you access to a lot of the render stuff, a lot of the update tick options, and a lot of other stuff along with it. Once they implement support for guns, you'll be able to modify the damage types of the sentry guns as well, which is handled by the gun class. So the gun class actually specifies the ammo. Actually, the ammo is what does the damage. This one simply does, okay, the fall off, how it reloads, rate of fire, reload time. It does all that cool stuff for you. And so, yeah. So what this does when it actually loads in, it'll inject in here, so it'll go, hey, I've got value 30 and everything else. It actually injects into the sentry classes, but it's details. So you get all this, you can modify it and specify all for your information. And we're just going to use this example, so we're going to go ahead and close this one. So there's no point in reloading Minecraft. You go through the whole 5-minute wait time. So in this case, we've modified this to be a search time of 5 and an attack delay of 0. If we look at the original and go find the same values, this stuff isn't exactly organized in the most beautiful way. You will see, okay, so I haven't changed it in here, but we can go find the sentry class, which shouldn't be taking me too long to find. So this is the actual logic that deals with storage. It is a big class. I'm actually planning on cleaning it up. A lot of stuff. So the default search time, if we can find it. The search delay is 10, so this will only search every 10 ticks or half a second for a new target, and it has an attack delay of 3 ticks. That way it doesn't immediately snap fire. We have a delay of 0 in here, a delay of 5. When this actually loads up, this what it'll do is it'll load everything, and then it'll wait to the very last second, and then do the override system. And we can come in here with a command, and we can run a similar command. This is a get command, so JSON override get, the type, ID, and then the field you want to look at. So target search delay, 5. So we can see it actually has loaded. So this guy now has a target search delay of 5. So every quarter of a second, he'll look for a new target if he doesn't already have a target. And we can check the other value. So we can actually go through and recheck everything. Every value that the system has access to, you can sit there and look at. I might adapt this to let you look at every field, but there's a little bit potential of exploiting with that. So I'm not going to give access to it probably fully. But you can see delay. So that's pretty much how to use the JSON override system. It is straightforward. Eventually we're going to have GUIs in the future, so you won't have to sit here and mess with text files. You'll be able to come into the game, open up a GUI, edit your settings, hit save, and you're done. You'll be able to reload this stuff for runtime as well, so there's going to be a set command eventually where you'll be able to set this as the game's running. So say, for example, you're testing stuff and you're like, I don't want to this work this way or so and so, and you go, hey, let's change to 10, 11, 12, and you sit there and you can play with it in real time. But not only can you play in real time, say if you're a really trolly admin, you can come in and go, hey, I want to turn all your sentry guns off, or I want to turn them into overpowered mode or stuff like that. So you can play with all that stuff and do a whole bunch of cool stuff with that. And of course, once again, this all supports access to other stuff, so you could actually make plugins and mods and event systems to come in and change this stuff actively. So you could have like certain periods of time. So say you're running a PvP server and you have a special event with an arena, and you want the sentry guns to go active at certain periods of time, where you want them to increase damage it goes. So as the match goes longer and longer, the sentry guns become more and more active, or they become less and less active, depending on how you want to do your game modes and everything. But yeah, that's been pretty much it. I'll come up with a little cleaner video than this here later as well, and more specifics on how to do certain details, what to avoid, what to do, certain things to not mess with. Like, for example, you really don't want to be setting these to -1. It has code to handle it, but you're just wasting your time. There's also with things like weapons, I'll have to tell you guys how to program the clips and how to handle swords, how to handle different damage types, but it shouldn't be too hard.